for joining me on this action-packed edition of the KEVTalks podcast, which is really a port of the You-Jitsu Podcast compilation from episodes 8 to 25. So this is kind of a long one, about an hour. Sit back, relax, get that jiu-jitsu mind ready. We are covering things like you have to practice stand-up, give the white belt some wins. Jiu-jitsu will call your bluff, what makes a blue belt, some listener feedback, wrestling, submission, and grappling. What if you miss class? There are levels to jiu-jitsu. It's very humbling. Anxious jiu-jitsu sometimes, that's okay. Top 5 exercises, in my opinion, to improve your BJJ. How to build a solid base, literally having a good base so you don't fall over or get pushed over so easily. The top 3 escapes that I believe every white belt should know. 4 supplements every older grappler. If you're an older grappling gentleman like myself, I'm 49. These are supplements that help your joints not be so bad, help you be more healthy. How to deal with spazzy training partners, how to establish position before position, and moves to practice outside of the jiu-jitsu gym that will help keep your strength and endurance up. I hope you find this helpful. For now, let's roll into this compilation. Hey everybody, welcome to the You-Jitsu Podcast. Today's focus is practicing stand-up. You have to practice standing up, shooting doubles and singles and throws and takedowns and that kind of stuff. This was reinforced to me as I went to class yesterday, and all we did was stand up the whole time. It's exhausting. It's a different level of cardio than sitting down, pulling guard, however you start, one up, one down. And practically, if you're going to compete, everybody starts standing in the real world, if there's some sort of ruckus, you got to use those jiu-jitsu skills, you're going to be standing up, right? Unless you happen to be like Ryan Hall is at a restaurant and some a-hole comes up and starts messing with him. Of course, he's Ryan Hall, so he could jack them up anyway. But then maybe you're seated rather. But practicing stand-up lets you know how aggressive you are or not as far as shooting in. And the great piece of advice I got when I was exhausted near the end of my 4th round after doing a whole bunch of other drills was just shoot. Just try something. Don't worry about, should I do this? What about this? Do I lift the arm and duck under? Just try it. That's how you get good. As you'll come to find out, the more you do jiu-jitsu, repetition is key, just like anything in life, but keep showing up, keep trying, keep shooting for the takedowns. You're going to get sprawled on, you're going to get squished sometimes, you're going to get stuffed with a forearm to the face, but this jiu-jitsu isn't for the meek, honestly. And you know what? You'll learn from it, right? That's a lesson learned is, my shot was weak. I didn't step in enough. I didn't shelf the leg enough to get a good trip, etc., etc. So today's message is you have to practice stand-up. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Breathe, frame, survive. Hey everybody, Kevin Pennell, salty Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt and 3-time warm-up round world champion. Although this week in the warm-up round, I felt like I got schooled, maybe losing my touch. Anywho, quick note, and something I shared on Instagram this week and thought about, and I appreciated as a white belt so long ago, seriously, is to give the white belts a win, right? If we who have practiced a little bit more, or a lot more for some of you out there, just smash. And I know that's some people's mindset, right? Is you have to earn it, you have to smash, you have to get through it. I get it. Every white belt's getting smashed unless you're some college wrestler that comes in and you're just, a dynamo, or, some of the folks that are able to train full time right now, some of these, the new generation of champions. But in general, my philosophy, my thought, as just an older grappler, but also as a parent, a coach, for other sports, and I taught some BJJ kids classes as a teacher and instructor, is that if you always pound your students, if you always hit them and don't give them wins, then they're not going to have that positivity. And in jiu-jitsu, that's what we want, right? There's days that are going to be awful because we get our butts kicked. That's happened to me recently, and it sucks. It's the dark valley of jiu-jitsu, as they call it, maybe when the blue belt blues. But for these white belts that are coming up, that are just starting, let them get a sloppy arm bar or a triangle or a something, and let them try. If they get stuck, help them complete it. Getting tapped, as you all know, if you've trained a little bit, is not a big deal, right? You watch ADCC this year. The best in the world got tapped by the best in the world, and sure, it sucks, and that's their whole game, but if you're like me and you're, as what am I called, a hobbyist, right? Because I'm not living that jiu-jitsu life constantly or whatever. Then yeah, you want folks to stay in there. I'm not, as a 200-pound person, going to smash the 130-pound new guy or girl and just so I feel good, that's ridiculous. So let them have some wins. Teach them how to get out of things. If you're, in side control or mounting them and they're just sitting there, have no clue because maybe, they didn't go to an intro class or they didn't get any help, show them the escape, right? And let them do it. Or if you can feel them trying to do an armbar, because if you've rolled a little bit, you can feel an armbar coming, whether it's from a good person or not. And particularly from a white belt. So give the white belt some wins, keep them coming back, let them feel good. They will figure out very quickly that you or others are letting that happen, right? When you start to roll a little harder as they get better, right? Everybody amps it up a little bit, like, okay, now you're getting it. They'll realize, oh, that was a free one, but they'll still feel good about it, right? So give the white belt some wins, keep them coming back. Thank you for coming back to the You-Jitsu Podcast. And share it, please. Leave a review, Apple, iTunes. I'm sharing these episodes everywhere, Facebook, LinkedIn as well. So breathe, frame, survive.
Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. Kevin Pennell, host of the You-Jitsu Podcast. Why is it You-Jitsu? Because it's your Jiu-Jitsu journey. Thought for the day for this episode is that Jiu-Jitsu will call your bluff. There's no hiding from reality on the mats once you're partnered up. There's no hiding whether you're brave or scared on the mats, and that's okay. Some days you'll be super brave. Some days you'll be scared out of your mind. There's showing up. There's trying your hardest, and we all try our hardest at different levels. There's slapping, bumping, and rolling. That's jiu-jitsu. It's very hard. It's not for everybody, but for those that stick with it, it is well worth it. It's worth going when you're tired. It's worth going when you don't feel like it. And if you give it a shot, you may like it. Most people actually don't. Most people quit. So be one of the small percentage of people that stick with it. Take those deep breaths and breathe. Get those arms between you and your opponent and frame, and survive.
What makes the blue belt? Cotton and dye. But seriously, what's behind the meaning of a blue belt? There's a whole lot of philosophies from people that are way more learned than me in the jiu-jitsu. But I will say there's two things for me as a blue belt. I've been a blue belt a couple years now that stick out in my mind all the time when I'm training, when I'm rolling, etc. And the first I heard John Danaher say on BJJ Fanatics, and it was, if you are inside control of a white belt and you can't get out of it, you're not a blue belt. Right? In some way, shape, or form, use your escapes, whatever you know, frame up, breathe, frame, survive, right? Like we talk about here. But you need to be able to get out of side control from someone that's less experienced and a lower, quote, rank than you, I guess. I don't know why I quoted that. It's true. The second thing, and this has been in a couple videos that I have seen or heard, is that a blue belt should be able to handle someone, meaning control them, that is bigger and stronger, maybe a bit faster and less trained, right? So let's say the new person who comes in and they're stronger than you and a little bigger than you, you should be able to control them, right? And that doesn't mean they may not be able to pass your guard and, be real heavy on you, but you shouldn't be stuck there at all. You should be able to get out of there and chill out. And I've had guys come in and they're these big, strong, younger dudes, and do I keep pressing with my legs and, try and hold my guard and maybe get my knee tweaked or twisted? I'm 48, right? For me, no. So sometimes I'll let them pass knowing I'm going to then sweep you, or I'm going to then kind of sit up, push, frame on your neck, push you back, because most folks aren't used to that. And they're like, oh, they get freaked out, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. And gals. There's a thing, but the principle is that they shouldn't be able to control you and hold you down and dominate you, right? So those are two things for me as a 48-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt for a couple of years, is that one, I should be able to escape any position from a white belt. That doesn't mean there's not white belts out there that are really tough and good, particularly side control, per John Danaher. And then the other thing is, if there's someone that's bigger and stronger, they come in there, you should be able to control them pretty well. So just think about that. That's things I think about and practice. And, on good days and bad days, sometimes it's easier than others, particularly for the older rollers like myself. But thanks so much for listening to this short brief in 2 cents. Breathe, frame, survive. everybody, welcome back to the You-Jitsu Podcast. On this edition, I've got some feedback that I got from somebody on LinkedIn from the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu group. So thank you to Kenneth T. Color belt here, he says, and he would advise white belts to learn your fundamentals, what to do in guard, etc., and not so quickly want to learn the new squid platypus guard sweep. That was in quotes there. So great focus from Kenneth T. So if you're newer, don't worry about all those fancy things you saw at ADCC that the best of the best in the world are doing. Figure out how to maintain your guard, how to pass the guard, how to get out of side control, right? All those things that'll get you to the next level, that'll help you survive a little bit more. That's going to make a big deal. And Kenneth goes on to say, too, and another not so subtle advice, go train and go home. Don't get involved in the politics of some gyms that have cliques, and associating yourselves to some cliques makes training difficult. So that really is pretty straightforward, but there are different groups of people in gyms, right? I'm honestly pretty lucky that the gyms I've trained at, there's certainly groups of people that hang out with each other more than other groups, but people aren't shunned. There's not cliques like, oh, you're not this color belt, or you don't hang with this or do this job or something, but that exists, right? That exists in jiu-jitsu gyms, that exists in life, whether you're an adult or a kid. So do your work, Kenneth says, and then go home. Don't worry about the nonsense. I will say this, though. It is good after you have some hard training, whether it's a class and you've done hard rounds at the end, or it's an open mat and you've been getting your butt kicked or kicking each other's butt the whole time, to hang out a little bit, to talk to your teammates, right? Because they become your teammates when you join a gym. You're going to go to tournaments together. You're going to support them. They're going to support you. You're going to ask them. I know I do. I ask upper belts, or even, belts that are my same color, blue belt. They give me a hard time or beat me, like, what'd you do? How can I get better? What can I focus on? That kind of stuff. So there is some value in hanging around and talking. I think to Kenneth's point, he's probably talking about don't get sucked into nonsense and drama in a gym, right? That can happen. So thanks, Kenneth T. And if you all want to give some feedback, we've changed this a little bit, so go to KEVTalks25.com, and there's a You-Jitsu link at the top. So I'm consolidating kind of where I do things these days. So go to KEVTalks25.com. There's a You-Jitsu link, feedback form, same thing. If you're a white belt, ask those questions, or give advice to some newer white belts. And if you're a colored belt, help some folks out. Help out the newer belts. Help me out. I'm always willing to learn. Thanks again for subscribing and listening to the You-Jitsu Podcast. Remember, everybody, breathe, frame, survive. Hey everybody, Kevin Pennell, 3-time warm-up round world champion, here with you on the You-Jitsu Podcast and on my shiny new Audio-Technica AT2020 Plus USB microphone, doing a little podcast nerd. So hopefully it sounds a little better. So I wanted to share something that I shared on the BJJ subreddit that seemed to be pretty well received, and it was a great question. More importantly, is what's the difference between wrestling and submission grappling, and kind of jiu-jitsu. And here's my 2 cents, right? I'd be interested to see or hear from you all. Remember, you can go to KEVTalkspod.com and go to the You-Jitsu link and give me your feedback. So here was my take, is wrestling is takedowns, throws, and control to pin your opponent, right? Just like college wrestling, high school wrestling, Olympic wrestling, a lot of folks have seen that. Submission grappling is wrestling plus joint locks, chokes to submit your opponent. And of course, some jiu-jitsu base in there. And then of course, gi jiu-jitsu, I think, involves wrestling, submission grappling, your killer pajamas to submit your opponent as well. And I've also seen questions from folks that maybe didn't do a little history, and I would highly recommend, of course, you could search the KEVTalkspod.com website for history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling, but that wrestling has been integrated in Jiu-Jitsu, both gi and no gi, for quite some time, actually, but in particular in the 70s and 80s, holes, or R-O-L-L-S, rolls, but say it holes, right? R's or H's in Portuguese. But Holes Gracie got really big into wrestling, entered wrestling tournaments, got really good at wrestling, and then certainly integrated a lot of that in jiu-jitsu. And he was a big mentor for Rickson Gracie, right, who largely is the greatest jiu-jitsu player of all time. And so that's the cool thing about wrestling, I think, is these aren't independent, right, sports or grappling arts. They're so intermixed now. Of course, wrestling, they're not doing joint locks as much, but you get a stud wrestler in a jiu-jitsu class and they're new, they're still going to jack people up. So the difference is between whether you're just trying to pin somebody, whether you are wrestling and grappling and doing joint locks and chokes, or of course, whether you got those killer pajamas to grab onto. Thanks so much for listening to this brief on the You-Jitsu Podcast, and feel free to hit me up, right? KEVTalks25.com. Go to the You-Jitsu link. You'll see at the top there, and drop me a line. Give me some feedback. Thanks a lot. Remember, breathe, frame, survive. So I'm not in my gi today. I haven't been in my gi for a bit, actually, and that's what I'm talking about today. What if you miss class for a while? Life happens, right? I'm 48 years old. I have job obligations, home obligations, things like that. If you miss, okay, then you go when you can. You show up again when you can, but you also get after it, meaning exercise and do fitness on your own when you're not at class, right? So even though you're traveling, I was in a hotel 3 days. So you go to the hotel gym every morning, or you do something in your room every morning, or sometime during the day. I'm definitely a morning exercise person. Try and do things that could mimic jiu-jitsu, maybe do some drills, bridges, shrimps in place, or just push-ups, air squats, crunches, flutter kicks, get on the machines that are in the hotel gym or wherever you're at, or if you're at home, use whatever you've got. But stay in shape, right? As you know, whether you've just started jiu-jitsu and you're gassing out because you're using all your muscles, or you've been around and you know that there's in shape and then there's jiu-jitsu in shape. Every little bit counts, especially as you're an older grappler like myself. So make sure that you are staying in shape even if you miss class, and so that when you get to class, you haven't been sitting on your butt for a week, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into this blender of murder yoga that we love to talk about and love to experience. And always remember, breathe, frame, survive. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you for coming to episode 15. There are levels to this sport, game, martial art, whatever you want to call it. So this was made apparent. One, it's made apparent to me every day as a blue belt. There are brand new blue belts, right, that could be super scrappy, maybe not as seasoned. And then there are blue belts that are essentially purple belts that tap you all the time, that are just too hard to handle. And on and on. Same thing goes in different levels. And that just, you notice the levels between belts, right? So a brand new white belt, pretty much nothing you can do against the blue belt usually, right? Unless that person was a wrestler. I, as a couple year blue belt now, have a crazy hard time or get murdered by purple belts, depending on the purple belt, right? Depending on how much they train, what kind of shape they're in, what their age is. I'm 48, so that's a factor, but I work out a lot, right? As I mentioned in the last episode, if you miss, you need to keep working out. But don't get upset is what I'm saying if you're not the best of whatever belt color you are all the time, because other people train more, they exercise more, they're healthier, for whatever reason, there's levels, right? Watch ADCC or IBJJF, any of these giant tournaments with the best on the planet. They make each other, look like new people sometimes and submit each other in seconds, right? And those are the best black belts on the planet. But there's even levels between colored belts. And one of our high-level belts reminded me of this a few months ago. There's levels to the game, right? There's levels where if a person whose whole life is jiu-jitsu, meaning they're sponsored, all they do is train jiu-jitsu, they work out, and let's say they're, quote, a blue belt, even though they're, a black belt essentially, they can be black belts. Right, and that makes no sense in the mind of, as I guess the word that's used is, quote, hobbyist, which I think is kind of condescending, but whatever. I think it's more of a sport. It's more of a passion. I don't consider it just my hobby. I guess the difference is I don't try and compete to make money all the time, but whatevs. So you can see the difference in that, where you see these crazy high level blue belts like Nicky Rodriguez, like some of these other younger folks that are just explosive. They wrestled. So really they're high level grapplers. So really, if you could give an overall grappling belt, they're like a brown or a black belt. It's just in the art of jiu-jitsu. They could be like a blue or a purple belt, right? So what I'm saying, to bring it all back, is there are levels to this game. So you could be, just smoking everybody white belt, then you're a new blue belt and you could do okay, or just get smashed again and you're going to feel like shit because you're like, well, shit, I got my blue belt. I should be able to hang with that blue belt. Well, if you're a brand new blue belt and I'm a blue belt for 2 or 3 years, I'm going to have 2 or 3 years more experience at a higher level, rolling with higher people probably than you, and on and on. So don't worry about it. Just accept it. It's kind of neat to see, right? There's also, the purple belts that smash me. there's levels between each of them. And it's just neat to see. And again, what are the factors? Some natural talent, but who trains more, who puts more into it, who exercises outside of it, who eats better, who sleeps right, all that kind of stuff. So accept the levels, enjoy the levels in jiu-jitsu. It's pretty cool. And always remember, breathe, frame, and survive. Have you ever been rolling and maybe you're halfway through your second or third round, or shoot, even early in your first, and you're just tired, you didn't sleep good, you didn't hydrate well, and you're exhausted, and maybe the weight of the world is in your mind, and you start to get anxiety. You start to get crushed in side control, or north-south, and your face is covered, or you're mounted, and you're like, oh, I can't breathe. Anxiety in jiu-jitsu is not uncommon. It happens to me. It happens to new folks. It happens to experienced folks having life issues, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, they say just relax, and I even say here, you know, breathe, frame, survive, and that's true, but it's a process, right? It's a process to get used to being in horrible positions when you can't breathe and you're exhausted and your muscles are burning because maybe like I do sometimes, I'm using too much strength instead of technique, or not balancing the two. And, you know, it's me and another guy that's a couple 100 pounds and we're just, bleh. And then I think about my sick family members and I think about the work I have to do, and it creeps into my mind, and I haven't pushed it out like I get so often when I am rolling and I am in a good zone, when I'm not thinking about the world, and that great value we get from jiu-jitsu, right, of not having to think about the world. But the world is still there. The world is there when we walk in and it's cold and we're taking our flip-flops off and we do a quick bow and get on the mats and start. And sometimes that gets bottled up, and it gives us anxiety. It gives me anxiety sometimes. It happened to me this week, and I tapped out, and I was embarrassed and I was upset, but I didn't have to be. My training partner didn't care because it happened to him too. Right? When you talk to folks, when you talk to other people, you train with them, when you see the new person, they come in, they're freaked out, right? It's uncomfortable to get crushed, to not be able to breathe, to be exhausted, and that's okay. Because by and large, jiu-jitsu gyms, dojos, places, whatever you want to call it, are safe places to be, which is funny because you're learning how to literally strangle people and break their limbs. So if you're anxious when you roll, that's okay. Try and push through it as long as you can. If you're going to freak out and it's just building up, then tap out. Take some breaths, but keep going. The key is keep going. The key is not to stop and quit and not go back. It's not to stop and quit and not finish the round. Take your tap. Take those breaths. Remember those frames. Try and get your mind right and get back in there and stay in the arena and survive a little bit longer each time. It's okay to be anxious, but don't let yourself quit. Don't quit jiu-jitsu forever. Don't quit the whole round. Don't quit the class or the open mat. Thank you for not quitting on the You-Jitsu Podcast. I thank you so much for listening. Remember, breathe, frame, survive. Hey everybody, welcome back to that You-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Pennell. I am the salty 48-year-old blue belt and 3 times warm-up round world champion. Go 100% of the warm-up rounds. That's legit. Just kidding. Don't do that. People won't like you. So what shall I share today? I'm going to share what I think are the top 5 exercises that you can do outside of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because let me put that caveat out there. Nothing replaces rolling to build cardio for Jiu-Jitsu like rolling Jiu-Jitsu. So let's just say that. But these are things that I do regularly that I think have helped my cardio, my stamina, my muscular endurance, all that good stuff that we need when we're rolling, whether we're chill rolling, we're beast mode rolling, whatever. But it's things you can do. Some of them require equipment. So if you have a gym membership, super, or you're building a home gym, great. If not, some of these you don't. So the first thing for me is hang clean. So that means you are standing upright, you're holding a barbell, which is the long bar, and you have some weight on it. And you kind of shrug it up and pull it, and then you pull it up to your chest and you go back down, and you do that in kind of rapid succession. So I don't mean just doing those slowly, I mean doing them in rapid succession. So like do a set of 10 of those, take like a 20-second break, do another set of 10. So basically you're building up that acid in your muscles, you're pushing your cardiovascular system, so it's hard to breathe. But those are good. I really like hang cleans. They're good for you. They'll build up your lats, your traps, get that pulling motion, and that leads us to my fourth. I'm going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So to my first one. So the fourth is pull-ups. So doing any variation of pull-ups or chin-ups. Pull-ups is when your palms are not facing you. Chin-ups is when your palms are facing you. I have a multi-grip bar from Titan, so I can hold like kind of where my hands are parallel with the thumbs facing me or palms away or diagonal or any kind of thing. But basically, if you can pull yourself up a few times, do some sets. If you can't do pull-ups, get an assistance band. Or like I did the other day, I did a set of 100 pull-ups. I certainly didn't do all the pull-ups clean, we'll say. So I did as many as I could clean. Then I did some kipping, which means I kind of kicked my legs a little bit. And then when I was totally gassed out, I just jumped, right? I was using a doorway, so it was kind of lower. So it was easier to jump. But if you have a pull-up bar where your arms are almost extended, you can kind of get a little jump and pull and a little jump and pull. That helps. Or you can get a bench and jump up, hold yourself, and lower yourself down. But when you talk about improving your grip, improving your pulling, and especially if you're doing gi, you're grabbing gis, you're grabbing sleeves, you're grabbing, the knees to do Toriando pass, those kind of things. And even no gi, if you're using kind of a hook grip on the back of someone's head to snap them down, or you're doing arm drags, basically being able to pull is very important in jiu-jitsu. Number 3 for me is flutter kicks. And so this is where you lay on your back, hands under your butt, you're holding your head off the ground, and you go 1, 2, 3, 1 as you kick your legs, and you keep doing that, and it's 4 count flutter kicks. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. I did thousands of these when I was in the Navy and still work them in. And the reason that I like them is because to me they mimic that feeling you have when someone has passed your guard or taken you down past your guard, and now you have to turn toward them, do some shrimping, or they have you in the on belly, or basically anytime you have to hold your stomach strong, which is a lot in jiu-jitsu, but still move your hips and use your legs. And flutter kicks, when you do sets of them jams, if you haven't done them before, just doing a set of 10 4-count flutter kicks will gas you out. They'll burn your hip flexors. And that's the feeling you get when doing jiu-jitsu. So that's a good one. My number 2, and this is again a kind of muscle endurance builder and a gasser, are called gorilla cleans, and these are with kettlebells. So imagine, if you will, holding one kettlebell up, so the bell is on your forearm, kind of under your chin, and the other one is hanging down in between your legs, and then just switch places. So you're pulling one up, letting it down, pulling one up, letting it down. So you basically look like a gorilla sitting there, like hitting the ground or your chest kind of thing. These are really good. They're similar to hang cleans in the way that they make you tired, but the individual weight that you have to balance on them kind of, to me, mimics you're turning to the left when someone's passing your guard, you're turning to the right, you're pushing, you're pulling, and it's a really good exercise to build up cardiovascular endurance, muscular endurance, and just to gas yourself out, and they suck, which is why I do them, because sometimes jiu-jitsu sucks because it's hard, but that's why we do it, right? My number 1 is to build endurance that mimics the total loss of breath that you get when you're rolling hard or getting crushed, are sprawls or burpees, right? And I got the idea to do the 100 burpee challenge from listening to Jocko Willink, which is also, of course, like many people probably listening, between him and Joe Rogan, what got me into that jiu-jitsu. But doing sprawls, so standing up and then sprawling to the left and then sprawling to the right, or just doing a burpee, which is very similar, right? And trying to do 100 burpees under 10 minutes is your challenge, right? If you can't do that many, then do less in the same amount of time, but just do as many as you can with minimal breaks. I have found, if you're looking for a tempo, if you can do 10 in a minute, then you can knock out 100 in 10 minutes, and it still gives you some time. If you're just getting started, just, do as many as you can, get your breath back, do as many as you can, get your breath back. But that's like jiu-jitsu, right? So sometimes, when you're in a hard roll and you're going and going, and then you're gassed out and then you're squished, and then it's calm period for a second, unless you're, just moving constantly, which I find hard to do. I'm in pretty good shape, but to me, it's hard to move constantly in the jiu-jitsu match. But you then want to have bursts of energy, right? A burst of energy. Oh, I felt an opening there. I'm going to shrimp out and get away, or I can turtle up and roll out, or something like that, right? So to me, my top 5 are from 5 hang cleans, number 4 pull-ups, number 3 flutter kicks, number 2 kettlebell gorilla cleans, and number 1 sprawls or burpees to get that heart rate up, get that blood moving. And as a bonus, what I think is also helpful is mix in practicing some bridges, right? We do bridges and warm-ups. You all probably do too if you do a traditional kind of jiu-jitsu warm-up where you jog around and, side to side and that. But doing bridges is both good for your core. It's good practice, right? Especially for new folks, which is really a big focus of this podcast, is you need to be used to bridging, particularly to escape the mount, which is going to happen to you a lot. Right? So you're going to trap an arm, you're going to shoot your arm up under their other arm, you're going to trap their leg, and you're going to bridge. And so that's how you're going to escape that. That's how you're going to escape other stuff. And then practice shrimping, right? We do that during warm-ups too. And stationary, you could go down the floor, which is cool. And it's hard for me to explain the shrimp if you haven't done that before, so look it up on YouTube. Excuse me, there's tons of videos, I'm sure, on that. But it's good to practice those because you actually do use those movements a lot. So it's really cool. So for all of you that are just starting jiu-jitsu this year in 2023, I hope this was a helpful list and that you're going to work outside of jiu-jitsu unless you have the ability to train every day, which is awesome. I don't. Family, kids, work, all that good stuff. If you have the ability to train every day, I would still suggest, if you're younger in particular, that you work out and do jiu-jitsu, right? Because the supplemental cardio that you get pays off, right? Both in tournaments and classes. I've found the extra exercise that I do outside of jiu-jitsu gives me an advantage in my cardiovascular and muscular strength even against other folks. And not just so I muscle folks, but I may not gas out. I may gas out in my head if I'm having a bad day, meaning I lose the motivation or I get a little anxious or whatever. But my body seems to hold out pretty well at 48, and these are the exercises that I include in my workouts all the time. So thank you all for including the You-Jitsu podcast in your regular routine of podcast listening, particularly in the jiu-jitsu genre. So please share this too and leave a review on Apple Podcasts if this has been helpful. Or not. I'm happy to read all the reviews and get a hold of me. Check out KEVTalks25.com. I don't have a unique You-Jitsu website anymore because I do another podcast called the KEVTalks Podcast where I talk about a lot of leadership and business and stuff like that. And I've combined that with the You-Jitsu podcast under K Pennell Productions. So KEVTalks25.com, and you'll see a link there to get to Jiu-Jitsu, You-Jitsu, and send some info if you'd like. So thanks so much. And remember, the key 3 things to do is to breathe, frame, and survive. Godspeed.
Here to talk about 3 critical escapes that every white belt should know. Okay, number 1. You should know how to get out of side control. What is side control? That's when someone's perpendicular to you, their chest is on your chest, one arm's under your head, the other one's under your other arm. I'm not going to break it down. Their knees are by your hips. Basically, they're crushing you from the side, hence controlling you in side control. So this is key where those frames, remember, breathe, frame, and then survive. So here's how you can survive a little bit. Get those frames in, right? So you're going to shrimp out. You're going to tuck that arm in that's closest to their hip into their hip. Then you're going to frame out again. You're going to kind of push them up and back. You're going to roll your wrist under their chin. Don't put your arm out. That's going to get broken. Under their chin, so you got your frame right up under their chin, on their shoulder, one in their hip crease. And then you're going to shrimp out one more time. And then you're going to get your knee in there or do something, right? Essentially, you're not getting squished. And turn toward them and try and get them in guard. That's a super basic side control escape. Shrimping out from under people, away from people, you're going to do for years to come as you keep training. So remember that. Get a frame, get an elbow in. Get a frame, get your hand under their chin. Push up on them, bridge over, shrimp away from them, get your knees in front of them. The second is mounted. So now they went from side control to mount. Now they're on top of you, right? They are sitting on you. Their knees are by your hips. They're crushing you, doing whatever. This sucks. I've seen a lot of white belts freeze up, rightfully so. Most folks don't know how to grapple, particularly folks that are new. So here's your secret. This is the trap and roll. To me, this is what I show most white belts that I see that just sit there where they're mounted. And here's what you're going to do. First, I'm going to be sitting there. You're going to bridge. Boom. You're going to bump my hips forward. I got to put my hands on the ground, right? And my hands are on either side of your head. You're going to pick one side. You're going to collapse where my elbow crease is. Boom, pull that arm down, hold it with one arm. You're getting ready to bridge to that side, right? Because I can't put my hand back out now. You're going to hold it. You're going to think about shooting your arm up under my other armpit, back up over toward both of our heads, and with the opposite leg, whichever side you're going, right or left. So if I'm going to bridge you to the left, I'm going to trap your left arm, throw my right arm up under your armpit, use my right hip and go, and I'm going to bridge right up and over and roll you over. Now I'm on top in your guard. Way better than being mounted. Trap and roll. Google it. You'll see the video. It's pretty straightforward, but it's hard to do sometimes. But it's key to know when you're new, even when you're not new.
The third one is back control, right? So this is a progression too, right? Side control is bad, mount is worse. Back control is the worst place you can be if you're back mounted, somebody's on your back. So when someone is on your back, they'll have what's called a seatbelt grip. One arm is over your shoulder, the other one's on your armpit, and they should be covering one of those hands, right? The choking hand. So if my hand that's under your armpit's kind of hard to get that up around your neck, but the other one that's right up over your shoulder, boom, I can choke you with that. So whichever hand you feel or is going to choke you, you need to get a hold of that hand and hold it, right? Then you need to go to the ground, push them to the ground on that side. You need to start turning toward them, right? Controlling that hand, getting your hips up and over their leg. So your back and your butt and your hips are on the ground. And sure, they might come up and mount, whatever. You're not back controlled. You're not getting choked. And it's going to be a hand fight though, right? You got to grab that hand underneath. You got to grab the hand kind of over. And again, look up back mount escapes. I use this in a tournament. I use it all the time in class. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, especially if you're going against upper belts. But it's key. So to me, these are the three most important escapes that white belts should try every time they are in a roll, is to escape side control by getting your frames and shrimping out and pulling someone back into your guard. If they're mounted and they've gotten past your side control, trap and roll, trap and arm, hit them up and under kind of their armpit and roll to the side of the arm you're trapped because they can't base out with their hand. And if you're in back control, control that choking hand, go to the side that you're being choked on, and get your butt and your hips to the ground, turn toward your opponent, which is hard, right? Sometimes when you're nervous, you're tired, you don't want to turn toward your opponent. You want to turn away from them. That makes it worse. It's really hard to do, but turn towards them, come up, and then you can start your frame game again. So I hope this was helpful. If you're new, learn how to get a side control, learn the mount, trap, and roll, learn how to get a back control pretty easily. Thanks for coming to the You-Jitsu Podcast. Remember, the website for this is KEVTalks, KEVTalks, podpod.com. Got a You-Jitsu section there. You can send me some feedback, get featured on the show if you give some good feedback for other folks, or give me some suggestions on what to talk about, tips to share. Thanks again for coming. Remember, breathe, frame, survive. Triangles are strong because of their inherent structural characteristics. The corner angles of a triangle cannot change without an accompanying change in the length of the edge. Therefore, in order to change a triangle shape, an edge must collapse. Hey everybody, welcome back to the You-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Pennell, salty Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, 3-time warm-up round world champion. Welcome to the show. So that is from reference.com on an article called Why Are Triangles So Strong from March 2020. And today's episode is called Build a Solid Base in Jiu-Jitsu. So what I mean by that is I see white belts come in, and I did this, where you start in the guard, right? Often in schools, some of your first lessons, your icebreaker to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is being in someone's guard. For those of you that haven't started Jiu-Jitsu yet, that means, let's say I lay on my back, I open my legs, you come in between my legs, you're on your knees, kind of up on the balls of your feet, I close my legs around you, you're in my guard. I can do chokes and arm things and sweep you and all this kind of stuff. And what I found is a lot of new white belts fall over really easily, and not just because I'm a spectacular blue belt or sweeper or anything, but I kind of put a little pressure and they fall over. So as you start jiu-jitsu, you have to have a strong base. You have to know I'm going to stay solid. And why did I read that thing about triangles? Well, if you think about it, so if my legs are wrapped around your waist, you're kind of sitting back on your heels, and your hands should be on my hip bones, right? So your arms are making one angle, your back is making one angle, and your connection to the floor is making the bottom of the triangle. That's a solid base. So if I move you left or right, it's hard, right? If you can base out, meaning you could put a hand out there either way, or you are pushing backwards trying to break my legs open, you're trying to take away one of those lengths to weaken the structure. So as soon as you start, think, I'm going to stay upright, because getting swept and getting somebody on top of you, especially when you're new, or even now when I freak out sometimes when someone big and heavy's on me, it sucks. So if you think about, I need to have a solid base where my knees are kind of wide, I'm solid, I'm not sitting up real high or real low where I can get pushed backwards really easily, then that's going to help. And if you think about it, let's say you do get swept. Let's say I kind of pull your arm and push my legs over. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of different sweeps. And now I'm on top of you. Now you want to frame, right? Not stick your arms way up in the air. That's armbar city. But you want to have your frames on my hips. And then if I come around to side control, a frame under my chin, a frame in my hip. You're making little triangles everywhere that are strong structures to keep me from squishing you, right? And then to get yourself back to a better, maybe to get me in your guard. So when you start jiu-jitsu and as you keep training jiu-jitsu, just like this morning, I'm building my fitness base. I keep building it up so it's better when I'm on the mats, and then I build on top of that. Physically build a stronger base out of your body. Don't get pushed over quite so easy, right? Don't just fall over just because you're new. Kind of sit there solid and think about having a strong base like you're a triangle that's hard to push over. So thank you all for coming to the You-Jitsu Podcast again and listening. I hope this is helpful. Remember, go to KEVTalks25.com. There's a You-Jitsu section there. I also host that podcast where I'm empowering people, improving processes, and facilitating progress for folks from all different genres and walks of life. Thank you so much again for coming to this podcast. Remember, breathe, frame, survive. Hey everybody, welcome to You-Jitsu Podcast, episode 21, 4 supplements that older grapplers should take. These are things that I take. I'm not a scientist, so I'm just going to share the brands that I take, what I take, why I take them, and a little bit about the supplements, and kind of leave you to your own Google Flu research out there. I do and will say am an affiliate or ambassador for Jocko Fuel products, which is one of the things I take. But I also alternate between some of those things and other brands, but I'll share that in a second. So right up front, here's the supplements. They are glucosamine and chondroitin with turmeric in it, which is curcumin, which I'll get into, krill oil, creatine, and vitamin D3. So those are the 4 supplements I recommend. I also take a multivitamin and some vitamin C when I'm not feeling well. But these are the 4 things that I take that I think are good building blocks for grapplers of all ages, but particularly if you're older. And here's why. So glucosamine and chondroitin, been around for a while. A lot of people take it. There's mixed studies. The source I'm going to use here is from the Arthritis Foundation, that it can help with inflammation, essentially, and joint pain. So it helps because the cartilage, or the thing that connects your joints, this helps kind of shore them up, reduce inflammation. So inflammation is a common theme. We want to reduce that throughout our body, particularly in our joints. Whether we're young or old, we know doing jiu-jitsu, it's tough on the joints, on the knees especially. Elbows get sore when you drill arm bars a lot. So glucosamine and chondroitin, I take a version from Vermersion Health, but I also take a Jocko Joint Warfare. Both of them have glucosamine and chondroitin, turmeric, which is curcumin, which is a very old, for thousands of years, folks have been using it. It manages inflammation. It reduces free radicals that cause damage or cell damage. So that's a big thing. So if you do start glucosamine and chondroitin, get one that has turmeric in it. Again, if you go to KEVTalkspod.com and click on stuff I take, there's a link there. I do get a little percentage if you buy some things, but you also get 10% off with the code that you use. So bonus. The next supplement is krill oil. So this is good for heart health. It has omega-3 fatty acids. So these are like healthy fats that are not only good for your heart, but also they reduce inflammation. They reduce joint pain. It can help your blood lipids, right? So that's like your cholesterol levels and other items in your blood, and help reduce them, right? Raise the good cholesterol or the bad cholesterol. So krill oil overall for health is very good. It also, I've taken fish oil, which you've probably heard about. Krill oil to me is much more palatable. It doesn't leave me with that gross kind of fish burp, frankly, that can happen from fish oil tablets or pills, and they're kind of liquid gel looking things. So I take Onnit krill oil mostly, so that's a great thing there. Don't have an affiliate link, but also Jocko has Super Krill there. So I know I keep talking about Jocko Fuel stuff, but those are the 2 that I've taken the most. I started taking krill oil on Onnit, took Jocko Super Krill. Didn't really notice a big difference between the 2, honestly, but I do notice when I don't take it at all for a few days, whether it's psychological, placebo, I don't think it is. I think it's pretty legit. The third supplement I highly recommend for anyone that trains and particularly older grapplers, is creatine monohydrate. So tons of research. Creatine's been around forever. It's a safe supplement. It not only improves your strength, but can help reduce injury from improving your recovery. It improves brain health and bone health, which of course are all good. We want to be smart and do good things. So creatine monohydrate, again, plus we should be training between classes, right? We should be lifting weights, especially if you're older, keep that bone density, doing cardio to make sure that when we're on the mats, we can roll a little bit longer and hang with the younger folks, or even just, keep getting after it as we age. The last supplement that I'm going to talk about today is vitamin D3, and this helps absorb calcium and phosphorus. Vitamin D, of course, is good for your bones. Calcium helps build your bones, keep them strong. So all good things there. And very important to take vitamin D3. I take Nature Made right off the shelf. The creatine, I forgot to mention, I take GNCs. There's so much creatine out there. Creatine monohydrate is what I take. So vitamin D3, I take 1,000 IUs a day. So I take it in the morning with my other supplements. And the amount to take for creatine, like 3.5 to 5 milligrams is what was recommended to me by someone that's a bodybuilder. So it used to be, hey, you got to load all this stuff and then you got to take it, but you don't. Just consistently take it each day. Krill oil, I take what it says on the bottles, either 2 or 3. Same thing with the glucosamine chondroitin, whether it's from Vimersion Health or Jocko Joint Warfare. Just take what it says in the bottle, which is 3 capsules, and they're kind of like veggie caps with a clear capsule with some powder in them. So that's the dosages. Just follow what's on the bottle, really. Creatine, 3.5 to 5 milligrams a day. And then vitamin D3, really what I saw is like anywhere between 800 and 1,000 IUs, which is the measurement that they use for D3. So highly recommend you take these each day. Get them in your system. They'll help reduce that inflammation that we know we feel after we have a good roll, right, or good class or good drill or twist our ankle or tweak a knee or something like that. So supplement.
Do you ever get ready to slap hands and bump knuckles in jiu-jitsu, and you can tell the other person is already spazzing out before they even make a move? Well, on this episode of the You-Jitsu Podcast, I, 3-time warm-up round world champion and salty Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt Kevin Pennell, I'm going to share my tips on how to deal with folks just like that. So your training partner, and let's be honest, it's probably a white belt, maybe a real spicy blue belt, has this crazy look in their eyes, and you can tell whether it's a warm-up round or it's go time at the end of class or open mat, they are gonna freak out. So here's 3 moves, things that I do to help chill people out. The first, and I'm going to talk about gi and no gi. Actually, the first one is kind of the same, or not the same rather, but separate. The other 2 are the same. For me, collar grips. I am big on, and credit to Hicks and Gracie for a video I watched and using it many, many times in class, is I'm going to get a collar grip on them, and I'm going to have a strong arm, strong elbow, right, strong wrist, and I'm just going to hold them, and I'm going to not let them get close to me. They're going to keep trying, and often white belts don't know unless, honestly, I help them, which I try to. Remember, I did that episode, No Free Grips, so go check that one out. So I get grips all the time, and I hold people. I may push back on them if they have a crappy base. They're going to fall over, or I'll use that, kind of control them while they're fighting the grips. I'll grab their ankle and ankle pick them. But I'm going to make space. I'm going to keep my hands up so I don't get the headbutt in the face like many of us have probably gotten before when they come in real hard. So in gi, I'm going to get a collar grip. In no gi, I'm going to put my hand on their head. I'm going to put my hand on their head or their shoulder or something similar, right? But there's nothing to grab there. I'm going to make space and make them have to move my hand. I'm going to keep putting it there. And then it's, going to give me space and make sure, again, I don't get headbutted or something in the face. The second thing I do is, instead of my hands being up, if I'm sitting back, I will put my feet up, right? Put my feet up on their hips, use those, make space, turn on my side. So basically they can't hit me with some sort of lunging nonsense that they may do or poke me or something like that. And I would do that in gi and no gi, right? And just keep using my hands. And then ultimately, if we're doing that, they're going crazy, and maybe they're big and strong, and you know what? My joints get sore every now and then, so I don't like them to get all twisty. I'll let them pass. I'll give them a little resistance and go, okay, let's pass. Because, again, remember, as John Danaher says, as a blue belt, if you're in side control of a white belt and you can't get out, are you really a blue belt? That's my standard. It plays in my head, which is good. So it pushes me when I'm having a hard time, if I'm having a hard time. But I'll let them pass, knowing, hey, I'm going to let you pass, and then I'm going to do an escape, and then I'm going to get you in side control or mount. Side control is my go-to. And then I'm going to cook you for a while and let you freak out and burn your energy out and hopefully realize that, you don't need to be going so hard because we're having a roll. And that doesn't mean I don't roll really hard when I'm going against another person of equal skill or that's bigger or something. But I don't freak out on them like you've seen. And again, it's a stereotype sometimes, spazzy white belt rolls, because it's true, right? Some folks just want to win the round as opposed to having a strong, hard, competitive round. And I think that's something that we who've been training for a bit, I'm over 4 years now, 4.5 years probably training.
And, we should share that culture of what things should be like with new folks that are starting, and maybe even folks that forget, right? You have fellow blue belt and they're getting a little crazy with it or something. Roll hard with them. Use those tips. Get collar grips. Put your hand on their head. Make some space. Keep your feet between you and them. Turn to your side a little bit. Really, the prevention is from a headbutt or an elbow or an eye poke or something. And then, you know what? Maybe let them pass and then get out of it and then cook them and make them chill out. So thank you all for chilling out with me on the You-Jitsu Podcast again here. I really appreciate it. Again, go to KEVTalks25.com. There's a You-Jitsu link. Send me some info if you want to be on the show. If you have feedback for others, I'll say it here on the air and give you credit for it. So please go check that out. Like, subscribe to the podcast, particularly leave a review on Apple Podcasts, please. That would be awesome. And remember, breathe. Because you got to breathe to keep going. Frame to make some space so you can breathe better and survive through every round and every class and keep showing up. Godspeed, everybody.
Hey everybody, welcome to this Friday edition of the You-Jitsu Podcast. I am three-time warm-up round world champion Kevin Pennell, salty 49-year-old now, blue belt. Thank you for being here on the podcast. Today I'm going to talk about position before submission, right? So you'll see folks, I did this when I was new. I had my head and arms sticking out. I'd be reaching for things, thinking, I'm going to grab this and do that. You're not going to do anything if you're not in a good position. Now, if you've been training a while and you can pop up and get somebody in a guillotine or take them down or whatever, a flying triangle armbar, super duper. But generally, if you're just starting, you need to be in a solid position, have somebody in side control or mount or take their back, and then start working to get a submission, right? And there's really no getting around it. So we'll learn some basic passes to get around their legs. I really like the Toriano pass, or just grabbing heels and flipping them backwards or to the side and go around. Getting a good side control, right? Your knees, one knee is under their armpit, the other one's on their hip. You're chest to chest, real close, one arm under their head. You're holding their other arm up kind of across. And then you start working, right? Start being heavy on them. Go for that Americana, see if they flip away from you, go for that armbar, whatever, but you got to be in a good position before you try for a submission. A lot of folks reach out, and when you do that, you're going to get submitted. So pretty basic principle, pretty short episode, but you know what? The basics are what keep us successful or able to defend a little bit longer, or in this case, to be able to set up a submission when you have the good position. So thanks again for coming here to the You-Jitsu Podcast. I hope this continues to be helpful for folks. Hit me up on KEVTalkspod.com, and there's a You-Jitsu link there. You can give me feedback, have a guest request, and then also listen to the previous episode. And before I forget, please leave a review and a comment, if you will, on Apple Podcasts. That helps this show grow and helps more people like you and me who practice Jiu-Jitsu hear about this show and get those tips. So remember, breathe, because you're going to be okay. Frame to make space to help you breathe and survive, and keep showing up to training. Godspeed, everybody.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming back to the You-Jitsu Podcast. This is your host, Kevin Pennell, three-time warm-up round world champion, salty 49-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, reporting on three moves that you can do outside of the gym that will make your jiu-jitsu better. And that is, number one, bridging, right? We do these in warm-ups. You may do them too. Or if you know the trap and roll escape, which I mentioned in the episode about escapes all the white belts should know, then you know you're going to lay on your back. Your feet are kind of flat on the floor. They're right near your butt. And you're going to bridge up, lift your pelvis up. But you're going to do it over one shoulder. So you're going to kind of reach up and over to the left, up and over to the right. And do a bunch of those. It's good for your core, your back, all that kind of stuff. And again, escapes and rolling and being a fancy spin around jiu-jitsu player, you're going to bridge all the time. And so that's helpful. Related to that movement, also critical for escapes, is shrimping. They say shrimping ain't easy, but it actually, when you get used to it, is actually easy. It's just harder when somebody's on top of you. So if you recall the shrimp, right, you're kind of laying there, your hands are up. You're going to put, let's say, your left foot flat on the ground. You're going to straighten your right leg. You're going to use your left foot, kick your butt out to the left, and get out from under somebody. And then you're going to do it the other way and the other way. You can do that sitting still, where you don't push yourself down the mat like you do in a warm-up or when you're escaping, by just same thing. So if I'm going to put my left foot flat and straighten my right leg, instead of pushing backwards, I kind of lift my butt up off
and back toward my left shoulder and back down. And then, so this is a little harder, right? Because you're lifting your body off, but it's very important indeed for all the jiu-jitsu. The third movement, I will say, is sprawling. And one, you can do this as a way to do kind of the 100 burpees in 10 minutes challenge, which is super hard, but it builds great endurance. And instead of doing a traditional burpee where you fall down to the push-up position, come back up and jump up, just sprawl, right? Sprawl straight, sprawl with your right hip down, your left hip down, and it's an awesome workout. So do 100 sprawls in 10 minutes, or try to, and you can stop, get your breath, and then keep going, right? Because if you're going to train, if you're going to compete in particular, you're going to start standing up. So you may train all the time sitting down, which I don't recommend. You got to stand up every now and then because people aren't going to sit down on the streets, right? And certainly in competition, they're not. And sprawling, again, it's good for you for cardio and muscular, and it's just a practical thing. So if somebody takes a shot on you, they go for a single or double or, something, then you can sprawl on them. So again, bridging, it's a core movement. Shrimping, also a core movement, and you really get used to it. But instead of sliding yourself across the floor, which you can do that too, I've done that in my living room or whatever, but try and just lift your hip up and back, left and right, and then sprawling. Those are 3 movements I highly recommend you practice outside of the jiu-jitsu gym. And here's another big announcement for the You-Jitsu Podcast. I am going to shut down this feed in a couple weeks and move it over to the KEVTalks Podcast. So if you're a subscriber one, thank you so much for being here from day one. But follow me back over there. Administratively, honestly, keeping a couple threads, podcast feeds is too much overhead. And so I talk about jiu-jitsu on the other show as well. And so why not consolidate to the KEVTalks Podcast and include that as part of our wellness, section that I do. So in a couple weeks, again, this thread will shut down. So go to Apple, Spotify, those are the big dogs, but wherever you listen, look for KEVTalks, KEVTalks Podcast. That's me. It's blue. It's got Kevin red, talks in white, and a microphone on there. And my name, so it'll be pretty obvious. And subscribe, and then you'll start hearing in a couple weeks these You-Jitsu podcasts. So I'll shut this feed down, but we'll keep learning together, right? And we'll put new episodes out. I'll announce, which day we'll do the You-Jitsu focus things. And I appreciate you for being here, for sending feedback. I'll still take your feedback and your guidance. Remember, everybody, when you're training that Jiu-Jitsu, you got to breathe, get those frames in, and survive and keep showing up. Godspeed.